After a week of absurd political circus, the GOP finally has their speaker. Yet, this is only the latest act of the political farce that is the GOP and the conservative movement, which is an empty shadow of what they had been 2 generations ago. They are wholly bereft of coherence, sanity, probity, policy, veracity, honor, morality, ethics, and even patriotism. This is in addition to the obvious wreckage that is the Republic. None of this is surprising because the U.S. is no longer one. The reason conservatism lacks judgment and moral compass is because it is a tool of political war. Its animating force comes from outside. Unless we can hold the real governing structure of the U.S. to account, we're never going to be rid of their war nor their tyranny. We need to see faces, institutions, and names who we should be holding to account for the acts of their servants. Here are some of the notable faces of U.S. plutocracy. I will be discussing a few of those who shaped the way we are now governed. And then later, I'll be talking about the current generation. Some of the most notable founders in this effort are the Koch, Mercer, and Scaife families, but their ranks in total are in excess of 500 individuals who actively fund hundreds of nonprofits serving this end. They are faces we know, but there are others like the Cargill family who avoid personal notoriety. They also have forged and reinforced a common culture in the process. They rule through an industry built of think tanks, societies, foundations, nonprofits, and media, which shape the political process. This entire industry grew out of a project that started a little over 50 years ago, and I am going to cite Robert Reich here to summarize its beginning.
The corporate takeover of American politics started with a man and a memo you probably never heard of. In 1971, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce asked Lewis Powell, a corporate attorney who'd go on to become a Supreme Court justice, to draft a memo on the state of the country. In his memo, Powell urged businesses to mobilize for political combat and stressed that the critical ingredients for success were joint organizing and funding. The Chamber distributed the memo to leading CEOs in large businesses and trade associations, hoping to persuade them that big business could dominate American politics in ways not seen since the Gilded Age. And it worked. The Chamber's call for a business crusade birthed a new corporate political industry, practically overnight.
The first among them are the Kochs, and they were foundational. And oh baby, did they get into Powell's scheme. The Kochs have been the greatest architects and engineers of that industry and have shaped its cultural outlook of neoliberalism. Institutions like the Cato or American Enterprise Institute do the theorizing and generate policy. Their theory of neoliberalism is spread by higher education through business and economic departments in universities across America. Nonprofits like ALEC write laws. These are generally rubber-stamped by the GOP, and they are also lobbied at Democratic representatives for passage. Much of the rest of the industry is given over to picking judges and picking politicians who are willing to do their bidding. The media arm. Rupert Murdoch heads a traditional and well-known media empire. Less well-known are the Wilkes brothers, who fund PragerU and the Daily Wire. Bernard Marcus, who founded Home Depot, largely funds Charlie Kirk and Turning Points USA. Despite what conservative media says, both YouTube and Facebook are well known to prefer promoting conservative media talking heads. So far, I have focused on the first and second generations of U.S. plutocracy. Now I will briefly dip into the youngest cohort, the tech bro posse, the most notable of which is Peter Thiel, who is indeed a special case. Not only does he epitomize the zeitgeist of our economic overlords.
CEOs are the opposite of the exploiters. CEOs are the ones who make jobs possible. There are no jobs. There are no workers. There is no wealth to be distributed before CEOs, entrepreneurs, capitalists create that wealth. That somebody has to have an idea. Somebody has to organize labor around that idea. Somebody has to fund the idea. I've never actually seen a group of workers, unionized or not, show up at a place, say, wow, let's build an automobile or let's build X. Doesn't happen.
But his fondness of the evil forces of fantasy, particularly those of Tolkien, is where he stands out.
We all live in Peter Thiel's world. From business to technology to politics, he's used his massive wealth to shape society and control your life. And he wants even more power. In 2022, Thiel's investment in hand-picked far-right candidates, some of whom he nurtured for years, shaped the narrative for the entire election.
J.D. Vance will be the next Republican senator. A victory for Peter Thiel, who spent millions backing J.D. Vance.
Lots of tech founders say they're going to change the world. It's a big part of the VC shtick. But Thiel is different.
Our goal was nothing less than to replace the US dollar by creating a new digital currency.
For him, it wasn't about making a pitch sound good to investors. It was about using the philosophy of venture capital investing to forcibly shape the world to his liking. And the world Peter Thiel wants to create is chilling and rooted in VC philosophy. Monopolization, anti-democratic ideology, and absolute power for corporations over American working people.
He would make a Mordor of the U.S. For real. It should not be surprising, then, that his own orbit of business ties, from crypto, Palantir data mining, to Musk and Zuckerberg, have a record of fabulous success and also a track record of immense folly and outright criminality. All of this exists for political domination, not for a republic. And by commanding the lion's share of the economic and political resources of a nation, they dispose of a nation's wealth in whatever way takes their fancy, or folly, tolerating no input, debate, or consent, leaving nothing else for the nation itself to work with, regardless of urgent necessity. One other point about Thiel is that he's not even a capitalist. He considers competition as a waste of time. He has no pretense about free markets, only of liberty without any safeguard against abuse by the powerful over ordinary people, or even of his own peers. I will end with a historical note about Fred Koch, the father of Charles and David Koch, and I'll read from the Wikipedia on his political views. In 1928, Koch traveled to the Soviet Union to build oil refineries, but he came to despise communism and Joseph Stalin's regime. Koch went on to write that the Soviet Union was, quote, a land of hunger, misery, and terror, unquote. And according to his son Charles, quote, many of the Soviet engineers he worked with were longtime Bolsheviks who had helped bring on the revolution, unquote. It deeply bothered Fred Koch that so many of those so committed to the communist cause were later purged. According to his son David, his father was a very conservative Republican and not a big fan of big government. He was also paranoid about communism. Of course, today's conservatism enjoys all of those features. So history has come full circle. The folly of Fred's offspring to wage war on a republic and dismantle its functions has opened us up to a pathway towards tyranny and a totalitarian government. There is an old adage that says, a man is known by the company he keeps. The world's richest people claim that everything is best decided by them. I want to point out that with all the money that they have chosen every member of the Republican Party. And I think that says everything we need to know.